minutes recently? Has everybody had a chance to review those? I have. I didn't.
We had 2 sets since we had a special meeting last week, so.
Yep.
I have to admit, I have not. I'm sorry.
Okay, that's all right.
That's all right. I'm quick.
And they're not very detailed, so.
Okay, good.
Although you weren't at them, so it would be hard for you to approve them, but.
No, indeed.
Trust me, they're fine.
Okay, okay, good.
So,
I'm good. Yeah.
Before we continue, I'm a little confused. So Marie is not on the board? She's not? You got Rebecca?
She is.
Oh, okay. Who's Rebecca Borer?
Rebecca, yeah, Rebecca, I'm interested to see you here. What's up? Are you you're muted, Rebecca. I know Rebecca is going to be
a member of the public.
Yeah, she's a member of the public.
Yeah,
okay, I just the name wasn't
Marie is replacing Randall.
Right. I've been trying to connect with Marie, but I just want to make sure who was in the meeting, so my minutes and everything are here. Okay.
Okay. Yeah. No, Rebecca's actually she's going to become our secretary for the planning board, and she's very interested in all things Hudson. So I'm glad she's here.
Cool.
All right. So moving on. Does anyone have any questions about the minutes? Do I have a motion to approve the minutes? Well, we should do, I guess, our regular meeting first.
Yeah.
Do I have a motion to approve the minutes?
I'll make a motion.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Do I have a second?
I'll second him.
For the regular minutes, I wasn't here for the special meeting.
Yeah, the regular minutes, Tiffany. So Marie, second, any conversation? Comments? Okay. Motion to approve. Everybody say aye. Do you agree? Aye.
Aye.
Any nays? Okay, and now for our special meeting, which was on November 3rd. Do I have a motion to approve those minutes?
I'll motion that as well.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Do I have a second? I guess I can second that. Why not? Any conversation, comments, changes? All right. Motion to approve, please. Everyone say aye.
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 Any nays? Okay.
I
Draft
wasn't here.
minutes are now final. Great. Thank you very much. All right. Financials. Brenda, do you want to screen share? So I think it's just easier for everybody. You're staring at the screen pretty hard.
I know. I'm getting weird pop-ups. That's all. Can you see it yet?
Nope. Just the Brady Bunch screen.
Okay.
Oh, there we go.
Okay, cool. Sorry about that. Technical. I was asking new pop-ups that I haven't seen before. I'm used to controlling the meeting and not being on this end. All right, so this is our balance sheet as of November 3rd. So that's last Tuesday. We have just under $50,000 in the bank. And I did get my new laptop, and I gave you the invoice, which we can look at as well for my services for the last month, which is just under $2,000. So I haven't cut checks for that yet. So we're basically where we were before. I am still working with the auditor. I just got the journal entries for the other agency. So I'm expecting them to give me the journal entries to correct all this redundancy that we've been talking about in our financial sheets. So hopefully by our next meeting, I'll have everything input and everything will be good. But yeah, we're right where we were before.
Great. Thank you so much for working so hard with Matt and his team. I know there's a lot of crazy, very old wrong material in these. And I'm thrilled that it's finally going to be.
Me too. It kind of feels like once we get all this set, we kind of have a fresh start moving forward. So everything is much more clear about where we are and what's going on. So yay for that.
Yeah.
Um,
And Marie, you and Branda can,
Yeah.
well, they sit down together, you know what I mean, I think. Get
Yeah.
together however way is most convenient for the two of you. And she'll walk you through all our financials, the properties that HCDPA owns, where they are. And this will all become clear as mud.
Exactly. Like everything else.
yeah, I'm sorry, Marie. We've been playing phone
I
tag.
know, it's all good. We'll figure it
We'll
out.
get
We'll
there.
figure it out.
As far as, I mean, did you, my invoice for last month came to $630 and I sent it to everybody. I've been trying to keep myself around 3 to 4 hours a week so that I'm not, which seems to be pretty good as far as the workload. So yeah, we'll just keep moving along at that pace. If something comes up, let me know if there's anything extra I need to do. But beyond that, we've just been going through the files and trying to get everything organized. Admittedly, a little bit slow on the physical files and the transfer to City Hall because I talked to Rob Perry a couple weeks ago and DPW is quite busy trying to get stuff done before the weather changes. So once I get everything set, I'm just trying to make the move easy on them. The other thing that we need to discuss, and I talked to Betsy this morning, was that I'm having a lot of trouble dealing with Trustco Bank. And Mayor, you've been through this before, trying to set up bill pay so we can pay things online and make things easy. I'm suggesting, and the board will have to vote on this, that we move to the Bank of Greene County because they're much more, not just easy, but they're more understanding with nonprofits and how we have to operate. So once we cut a couple checks, I'll cut another check and we can just clear out the account and transfer to the Bank of Greene County if you guys are amicable with that.
Do you have a personal account with Greene County as well?
Do I? No.
Yes. Do
But
you know anyone that works there?
I do.
Who
Can I
said
just,
that?
oh,
Who
sorry.
said that?
I mean,
Who said I do? I was asking Brenda, who said I do?
I said, I know people that
Brandon.
work at the Bank of Greene County, but I mean,
Just for, to fill in a little bit, Trustco, just getting me as a signatory and the mayor as a signatory was so complicated. And I had to give them all kinds of personal information because they had to attach the account to me as opposed to the agency.
right.
So for Branda to be able to get into our accounts and actually, check balances and all of that, she needs so much personal information that actually I'm not going to share.
Yeah.
So, and that's not the case at Bank of Greene County. It's just, Bank of Greene County to me is like almost having a personal banker. They're so accommodating and they work with so many nonprofits. I worked with them when I was the executive director at the Hospital Foundation and they just couldn't have been nicer. And so I think this is a great idea. I've never
Would you like us to make a motion today?
Yeah, I would love it if we could have a motion to move our accounts to Bank of Greene County. That would be great.
Well, I'll make
Yeah.
a motion to move our Trustco accounts, to cancel them and move them to Bank of Greene County.
Thank
to
you,
make
Tiffany.
it easier for the board.
Can
if
I
you
just
need
make
me
a quick sorry,
to- Can I finish
before
my
we vote?
motion, please?
Sorry. Yeah.
Thank you. I have a
So-
motion on the table that requires a second.
It requires a second. Yes. Do I have a second? Then we can have some conversation about it.
I
Okay.
will second that.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Okay, Marie.
So just very quickly, HHA, we've had some problems with Bank of Greene Counties, to just be aware, in terms of, we've been trying to work with them to secure a bridge loan for Bliss, and we were rather disappointed with where it landed. So I just want you to know, be aware of that, since I'm on the board and I'm the chair of HHA.
No, that's important to know.
Yeah.
So, in the case in our case, it may be slightly different, Marie, because we're not going to ask them for money. We're just asking them to be our
Yeah,
account, put a place
Right.
to deposit our money.
A bank.
Yeah, we're not.
I wanted to ask Brandon, you already spoke with Greene County, I'm assuming, the bank, correct?
No, but since all of Hudson Development's banks are at the Bank of Greene County, I have,
So they're already familiar with us.
yeah,
Okay, thank you.
of course.
So is there any more discussion? Marie, are you comfortable?
I can abstain and it's not a problem, correct?
Of course.
Okay, yeah, then I'm comfortable.
Okay, so Tiffany has a motion on the table and there's a second. May we have a vote, please? All those in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any nays?
Aye.
Thanks, Tiffany. Any nays? And any abstentions?
Aye.
Marie, thank you. Okay.
Usually when you abstain, don't you have to give a reason why you abstain?
Yeah, I
Yeah,
got it.
I'm just saying for the record, that's all.
record.
We heard your reason.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, yeah, we'll make the record reflect.
Got it. And so we just need to motion to accept the financials in general.
So this is, have we been through them all? We haven't been through the P&L.
Oh, sorry. Just getting ahead. Here we go.
There we go.
So yeah, I mean, it's the general, this is just doing the roll up for the year of what you've paid so far. Yeah, as it is.
It doesn't look very different, never does. Okay, any comments, questions, concerns about the P&L? All right, so do I have a motion to accept the October financial statements? Well, actually, they're through November, up until November 3rd.
Yeah.
Make the motion.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Do I have a second? I'm happy to second that.
Okay.
All those in favor signify by saying aye, please.
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, great. All right.
So
great.
just in regards to switching the bank over, I'll put together our minutes from today and everything that the bank will need to be able to close out the account, start up a new account, and then hopefully we'll be able to set a time for Kamal and Betsy to go over to the Bank of Greene County and do what they need to do.
Great, thank you very much. You may share my contact information with them and well, that's fine. Oh, Rebecca, here you are. Welcome.
Hey, Rebecca.
Hi. Okay, we've approved the financials. I'm just digging up the agenda here. Where are we? I dropped my agenda. Where are we? There it is.
Old business.
Yes, we're on old business. Branda, if you could please bring us up to date on the separation of HDC and HCDPA, and that would be great.
Yeah, we're financially completely separate. There's no more reimbursements going back and forth. I have acquired the new computer and a backup drive as required by ABO. I have set up nonprofit accounts that are tax exempt so we can make purchases for office supplies, etc. Now that we're going to switch to a new bank account, I will wait until that's set and I will get QuickBooks Online so that we could have an updated operating system as far as that's concerned. And then I'll also, once I have that, I'll be able to get a printer and get set up in the new office at City Hall. As I mentioned before, I haven't really moved on the physical files yet because DPW has been backed up, and plus it's a little onerous because it's a lot to go through, but I'll start working on that. And then beyond that, that's kind of it.
Great, thank you. And I don't think there's any real time deadline about moving those boxes of files, just so long as you have what you need.
Yeah.
right now, and I think you do.
Yeah.
And the rest of it is really just backup stuff. It's just historical files going back to the beginning of time.
Right.
So
It's
wherever-
historical files and making sure, that we have, the thing that we have to have the most of is our financials and our minutes from the meeting. So, and just so you know, I've set up the new page on the city's website for us, and everything's up to date. I've been trying to make it look a little prettier, but the city website is what it is.
Okay. Well, thank you for all of that. I know you've been working hard on it, and it's we're getting there.
Yeah.
All right. So if there's no other old business, new business, when we could have started the meeting here, but I wanted to wait till Rebecca was on. I do want to welcome Marie Bale to the board. Marie's chairman of the board of the HHA and will play a really vital role here with us. And I'm very excited that you're here, Marie. Thank you very
Thank you.
much
Thank you.
for
Hello.
your public service. I appreciate it. Rebecca, would you bring us up to date on the anti-displacement grant?
There's no news. We're still just waiting to hear from the organization. That's all that's happening currently. We're just waiting. I think maybe today I'll inquire, about when we could expect to hear. We were supposed to hear for sure, or not for sure, but the original projected date that we would be notified was October 21st. And I think what happened, October 21st. Well, anyway, there was a little bit of follow-up questions. We submitted those. Now we're just waiting to hear again.
Rebecca, would you do me a favor if you haven't done all this already? Would you get together with Marie and bring her up to date on this? Because this is a huge project, and you were so involved with writing this grant. And if we receive the grant, it's going to be very impactful for the city. So I'd love for you to bring Marie really closely up to date on that.
Will do.
Great.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I also would like to request, just for our files, if you could give me a copy of the application and the materials so that we have them for our historical records.
Yeah, whether or not we get the grant, it's important that we have all of that.
Because a lot of times you could use the same language. We can just, reappropriate the language in a grant to apply for other grants too. So it's good to have them on hand.
Yeah, great. All right. Well, we wait with bated breath. Hopefully it's successful.
I will definitely let you know as soon as there's any news.
Great. Excellent. And Tim Mattis, where have you disappeared to? Are you still here?
Oh,
I'm
he's
here.
there.
Oh, there you are. There you are, Tim.
Hi. How are you?
Thank you so much for joining us. One of the things that we've been talking about on this board is a fair housing officer, which is in the city charter, but we don't really have a good job description for what that person would do and be, and how to really think about moving forward with this. So it would be great if you could share some of your knowledge with us.
Yeah, well, thank you. I appreciate coming to you all and talk about this. But so there actually is a fair housing officer for the county, and I'm not sure if you're aware that. I think Bill Fisher is the gentleman's name, and I don't know.
Tim, maybe I could just give a little background.
Yeah, we are aware.
Of the history of this move towards having a city fair housing officer, which is just that like I and others have been aware that Bill Fisher is the fair housing officer for the county, and that he has acted as the fair housing officer for the city as well, in that the city is part of the county. But it does seem really clear that the city has, that the description.
Bill Fisher made it clear himself during the city's housing and transportation.
Sorry, wait, you just completely interrupted me. Sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was trying to help you.
I'll be done in a second. And then what you're saying is totally the case. All I was going to say is something like that, discussions with, well, actually, you know what? I completely lost my train of thought. Tiffany, you go ahead.
Oh, you sound just fine, like regular Rebecca. But anyway, Bill Fisher, and during, I believe, 2016 2016, 17, Bill Fisher had participated in one of our housing and transportation meetings to introduce himself as the fair housing officer of the county. But to make a long story short, and you can definitely check out the minutes with the city, he said himself that Hudson is unique and we need our own. So that's what we've been doing, is seeking and putting together a description of duties, of the uniqueness of Hudson and what is needed and what we would like to see a fair housing officer in Hudson do. And that's what, believe it or not, what Rebecca and I are working on.
Yeah,
Well,
and
and
thank
I
you,
just
Tiffany.
want to add to that, I
Yeah.
did speak with Bill Fisher, and I think that the issue is that, well, number one, it is in the city code that Hudson, the city, is supposed to have its own. And for many years, that position was either just unfilled or was being filled by, it is supposed to be the executive officer of HCDPA. And so while there was an executive officer of HCDPA, that person was like nominally in that role and accepted that role, but there wasn't really a tremendous amount of follow through. And I think that part of, I guess, my own convictions about it have to do with seeing the specific, the role is described really clearly in the city charter as being about like making, well, very well, Tim, what it's about. And so it does seem like Hudson, as opposed to the rest of the county, has like an obvious, need for that. Which I have no, like, as I said to Bill Fisher, like no aspersions on him. I think he's a, very dedicated person. But just that there's like room for a more active role in the city.
Yeah, I agree. And thank you for the background information. You're certainly moving in the right direction, because I do believe personally Hudson should have its own individual fair housing officer. And certainly Hudson has some unique challenges. But, as far as putting in place a fair housing officer, I think it's very simple and straightforward. Designating an individual to perform those activities. Obviously, there is training requirements that are necessary for someone to become knowledgeable and experienced in carrying out that duty. And I know there are a number of HUD third-party vendors and contractors that provide that training. But even more than that, because the barriers to affordable housing are so broad, you have to really kind of take a step back and identify those barriers, and then, put a plan in place on how you're going to address those barriers. And then, then there's compliance to that standard that you set. So a lot of communities put together what's called an analysis of impediments to fair housing choice. And it's a pretty extensive document. And it's a document that's done through a consultant, through community involvement, that identifies specifically what the barriers are in the community to address. So when I worked for the city of Troy, because the city of Troy was an entitlement community, that means every year on a non-competitive basis, we receive funding from the CDBG Home and ESG program. In order to receive those dollars and implement those dollars into the community, the city had to develop and create an analysis of impediments to fair housing choice. We call it an AI study. And that's required. And that was required a few years back. There was a devolution of responsibilities that the federal government kind of transferred the responsibility from a federal level to a local level in dealing with specific barriers to affordable housing. Because, it's fair to say that, the people that have the most knowledge about fair housing problems facing the community are obviously the people that live in those communities. So through an AI study, local communities can identify specifically what those barriers are that they're dealing with for that particular geographic area. And again, it looks at all the service providers in the area. It talks to them. The study talks to them about what they're experiencing from the clientele that they're serving. It talks to lenders about the lending practices in the community. It looks at local policy as far as zoning and planning. You know, what does the zoning and land use policies, how are they creating barriers to affordable housing? So in order to have a fair housing officer really understand how to perform his duties, one, he's going to need some type of training and certification. I think it's like a three-hour course that you can take. But in addition to that, the city should seriously look into completing an AI study, and not only for assisting the fair housing officer, but I think it's going to be important if the city intends in the future to leverage funding through the CDBG program or home program, or even Rebecca, as part of your displacement grant. That's probably going to be an important part of understanding why people are being displaced and what the systemic problem is. And a lot has to do with those barriers to affordable housing.
So Tim, may I ask you a question? This AI study, is there typically grant funding, state or federal grant funding for this? Because obviously the city doesn't have in their budget money to hire consultants for this. And
Absolutely.
Perhaps to your point, it could come from the anti-displacement grant, but how would we know where those pockets of money exist?
I think there's a number of avenues that you could go down to. I think the local leaders could reach out to some of the political representatives of the area. Certainly the CDBG program, which is a competitive annual grant process. Those funds can be used to develop an AI study very easily. But I think it might be just as easy reaching out to the congressman's office or senator's office. They're very proactive with, dealing with these type of matters. They may be able to find some very quick turnaround funding for the city to perform this study. It usually ranges around between $5,000 and $10,000, depending how in depth it needs to get or needs to be. Hudson's a pretty small area, so it may be on the lesser side of that amount. And there's a number of consultants around the region that do perform these studies.
Okay, thank you.
Just a question. Logistically, is this something that the role that, doing that affordable housing person that we're going to hire in the city that we contributed money for, what was his name? I forget.
We don't, yeah, I believe it's Joe Chaika.
Right, Joe Chaika.
Joe Shaker, yeah.
Yeah. So, he's done a lot of work with HCDPA when we were putting together the strategic housing action plan. So I think that it might be a natural fit if this role kind of puts this all together.
Yeah, I agree. I think he probably has the knowledge or has maybe even written some of these AI reports with the firm that he's with. But sure, yeah, I would definitely try to fold that into whatever role he's coming on board with.
Can I, a similar thing. So his job, once it begins, is to develop like a plan for the city for affordable housing development. And so it just seems like that would be like, that should be some little part of that plan, would be to have this kind of study done. And it does seem like all the information's got to be available. Like making some kind of study like that sounds like it would just be a matter of collating existing data and just kind of like putting it into a form that exists. Am I right?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure, because when we did the strategic housing plan, Joe was instrumental, and he was looking at all of this data and information when it comes to servicers, the amount of, inventory we had, what was filled, what wasn't filled, et cetera. So I think that it might be a natural way to get this report and start moving on filling the role.
And
Sure.
Tim, are you saying that this study is just basically like a tool that the for the fair housing officer has as to aid in their ability to apply for funding? Because I mean, can you talk a little bit about whether the role of the fair housing officer in grant application? Is that part of their role or no?
Well, it depends on what you all perceive that position to be. Certainly you can add that into, his responsibilities, but certainly I think for the most part, a fair housing officer really is the point person that collects the complaints and files those complaints to the necessary agency, which obviously they all get funneled to the HUD fair housing office is where they go. And really the fair housing officer is a point person to do that. So he collects the data, he interviews the person who's filing the complaint, gets all the necessary information, and then acts as a liaison between the complainant and the HUD fair housing office. And really that's his role in assisting those complaints. But he needs to have a platform on which to perform that role. And certainly that's where the AI study comes in. And I see the AI study as really the first step in anything we do, that Hudson does as far as housing is concerned. Again, it's the platform that provides the knowledge, right? The information that the policymakers need and the population needs in understanding what the fair housing laws are and how they apply to them.
Mm-hmm. Kamal, can you say anything at this point about the progress towards this hire? Or I mean, I feel like maybe we asked this same question last meeting.
Yeah, I mean, right now we're with onboarding, getting everything kind of settled for Joe to hit the ground running. But once he's fully settled in and officially hired, then he will be meeting with the HCDPA and everyone else to here. And at that time, we can talk to him directly about anything pertinent as far as fair housing or anything else.
Mm-hmm. And is there a dual role? I mean, is it obvious? Would Joe be an obvious person to be this fair housing officer, or do those two roles have to be totally separate?
Yeah, they're totally separate.
Okay, that's what I thought. I just wanted to make sure I understood that correctly. All right.
Yeah, but he'll be meeting individually with all the participating partners. So we'll have ample time to pick his brain and hear, his ideas.
Okay, good.
He's got lots of information. He's pretty good.
Yeah, he is really good.
I have one question, and I'm sorry to take it back, or just because I'm taking the minutes. Tim, what does AI stand for again? I think I missed it.
It's called an analysis of impediments to fair housing choice.
Thank you.
Yep.
Tim, I have a quick question.
Yeah. Hurry.
Is this the AI, does it get updated every year? Because one of the
Yes.
things okay, good. Just want to
Yeah.
make sure.
Yeah, it's a continuum document and it constantly evolves because obviously the barriers change, right?
Exactly.
And the impediments change. So yes.
So it's a live document. Okay.
Absolutely.
All right.
Yep.
Can I also ask, is this something that the grant writers of the city would also be able to like take on right now, for example, is to start accessing like the CDBG funds possibly that are there for that?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, time is of the essence. I mean, even if the city wanted to, even just assign the role of to someone as a fair housing officer, get them the 3 hours of training, at least there's a point person in the city that can start shepherding these complaints to the HUD Fair Housing Office, because, you know, through my office and through the Housing Authority, we're constantly hearing stories of landlords displacing residents or charging unfair rents or not providing the accommodations, you know, to residents that have special needs or families or children. So I think you have to, you know, put an immediate platform out there where residents can be heard and have access to the information and know how to file a complaint.
Yeah, thanks. So you're saying there really are no impediments to actually just like HCDPA. I mean, I guess this takes us to the question of the city code or the charter, rather, or whichever it is, where it describes, you know, who the housing officer is supposed to be, which is, again, the executive officer of HCDPA. And so one question that I have is whether we need to like act really quickly now to try to amend city code so that it says instead something like HCDPA appoints the fair housing officer, something like that. Because that doesn't that have to be ironed out before we can move forward with this?
I mean, just absolutely. I do feel that it needs to be ironed out, and this is a conversation that we've had before. It just becomes a thing is that if it's a paid position, it becomes something a little bit different, because then it would have to be, because it's the city of Hudson, it would be not necessarily coming from HCDPA. And this is the confusion that it brings up every single time, is that if it's a paid role, is it HCDPA? Because we don't have an ongoing revenue that will be able to sustain any sort of position like that. So it would have to be, you know, something in the order of HCDPA, because this is our mission, that we appoint the person, but it becomes a city employee, which is a little bit confusing.
Tim, do you know, like, how do cities structure this sometimes?
Well, I don't think there's one set process. I think it's different wherever you go. It's up to the community to decide, you know, who has the role of deciding who the fair housing officer is. At some point in Hudson, they must have decided that, you know, your group was responsible for that, for whatever reason. I don't know. I think it's structured, however, wherever you go, differently.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel as though the role would have to be paid, the salary would have to come from grant funding anyway, no matter where it came from, because the city doesn't have money in the budget either.
Yep.
So no matter where it ends up residing, we have to find a renewable source of income to support the position.
And just if I could interject, I know in Troy, when I was working in Troy, there were a number of housing agencies that operated within the city. And so the role of a fair housing officer was someone who was in an housing agency, and their salary was compensated accordingly as part of their duty. So it wasn't being paid by the city, or it was being covered under their daily, you know, responsibilities in the role and in the housing agency that they worked for. Because most housing agencies were not-for-profit 501c3. So the grant funding that they were getting, they were using to offset in typically paying the salary for someone. So if there's a particular agency in the city that operates as a not-for-profit that gets grant funding, maybe that person within that agency can assume the role of a fair housing officer for no additional fee to the city.
Wow, that would be amazing. So you're talking about like Columbia Opportunities,
Sure.
or St. Catherine's, perhaps, or any of those kinds of agencies? That's what you're talking about?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah.
And again, this might be something that once Joe gets up and moving, he can like kind of look at and see what the best
Yes.
agency to do something like that might be.
Yeah, although I'm really
Or we can
leery
look at the
of
cost of the
making everything-
commissioners and lower that.
What'd you
I'm
say?
sorry, Tiffany, what did you say?
Or the city can look at the costs and the fees of the commissioners and see of lowering their pay rates to equal out a pay rate for the housing commissioner.
It's only 5,000 with them combined.
Yeah, well, it can be lowered to equal, it could be 500 a month. The dog officer gets 600 a month,
No,
so
it's
it could
not.
be-
It's not a month. It's a year.
I know, it's crazy.
They get paid 1,000 a year,
Yeah,
and the dog officer gets paid 600 a month.
yeah.
That's my point. Things can be moved around. That's all.
Well, I mean, as we know, that city's going through the budget right now. I don't think that is going to be addressed right now. I think it's going to take all of us together, kind of looking and seeing what the potential is. But I'm with you, and I don't want to go off topic, but we have other things in the city charter that we need to have looked at as well when it comes to the floodplain permit. So there's a lot of sort of back end work that we need to maybe clear up or bring up to date for what we have going on right now.
And I understand from from Cheryl Roberts, the city corporate counsel, that amending the charter is extremely expensive. It's just when you do it, rather than start picking little things, you really should do it wholesale. And the city's not in any position to do that financially right now. So I think we're just going to have to make accommodations where we can. And whether it's through working with the Common Council on how to get things done so that we can at least smooth the way, even if it's not perfect, because I know for a fact they're not going to amend the charter right now.
I mean, one thing I would say about it is, my understanding of how it ended up as the executive, that the fair housing officer is the executive officer of HCDPA, is that generally cities, there's a tradition of cities like not really taking the role seriously, and that in this case it was just sort of like, okay, we need to have one on paper and we'll just stick it in this place where
No, I mean, from what I understand, sorry to interrupt, the history is that, again, there was this Columbia umbrella that everything was together, which also included Section 8 housing administration. And so HCDPA and Section 8 administration were kind of bundled together. And the person that was in charge of the agency in Section 8 was in charge of it and did do that role for a certain amount of time. And once they split up, Section 8 remained its own entity. I think it was under Columbia Opportunities. And then there was, it just got split up, and nobody, because it takes time and effort and money to change the charter, they just let it go. So even when Sheena took on the role at HDC, she didn't even know that she was also getting HCDPA. It was like, oh, here you go. Here's this other thing that you're going to do too. And it's like, okay, but what's going on? And nobody ever addressed it. They kind of just turned a blind eye to it, which is really unfortunate.
I think that's what I meant by not taking it seriously.
Yeah. No, it never was. And it wasn't that Sheena didn't want to do it because she's well versed in this stuff. It was just that there were no tools. There was nothing. It was kind of like, okay.
Right. So I guess where I was going with that though was that until there's a way to, I guess formally move it out of HCDPA responsibility, it still is responsibility of HCDPA. And so at that level, it does seem like, it doesn't seem appropriate to me that we would, I don't know, try to bring somebody on as a volunteer, for example, at this point as a fair housing officer. And so it seems like HCDPA needs to figure out how to pay for it or to, get the money moving along through grant funding. So.
I mean, it sounds like almost that this could be part of the funds from the grant that you're applying for with anti-displacement, at least on some beginning level, at least to get
there is the possibility, but as I said, like the budget for the proposal is very complete, and at this point does not include paying a fair housing officer. There is some flexibility, like a time. I mean, there's some, I don't know, wiggle rooms in certain aspects of the proposal, but not really that much. Like the only wiggle room really is for studies. There's a significant part of, or like a small but significant part of the budget that is devoted to studies that are as yet unnamed. But other than that, it's all pretty clearly defined what these funds are for. So, so I guess, I mean, one of the things I also would like to do, and Kamal, I don't know if you are able to help with this, but is to determine, like, so the county has been paying Bill Fisher to be the fair housing officer. And I asked him, like, well, what part of your, how much of your work is city related? And he didn't feel like he could really parse that out. But in terms of figuring out what funds from the county could potentially pay also for a city fair housing officer, there's that route that could be gone as well.
Yeah, I mean, I'd be willing to explore it. I just, given the times and their financial issues, I don't know.
Well, I mean, didn't the county just get a whole bunch of sales tax? Like, wasn't there just like this massive leap in sales tax or something like that? But also just to point out, the city is, I mean, the uptick in eviction processes is a scary thing coming potentially. And so, that's the kind of thing, like, we really actually could use a fair housing officer in place before lots of eviction notices are served in court.
Well, it seems to me as though part of what we return to the county, well, actually it goes the other way, that we must be funding the county fair housing officer in some measure with the sales tax that we generate here.
Exactly.
Whether or not they've ever parsed that out and actually pulled out, well, this is the portion of Bill's salary that Hudson pays, probably not. So it might be a little bit hard to squeeze anything out of them, but certainly we're part of the team that pays Bill. So
exactly. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I kind of like the idea of the partnership with Columbia Opportunities because they're a nonprofit and they have access to a lot more grant funding than we ever would.
Right.
So that's an interesting avenue to explore. And again, Joe, just to reiterate, Joe probably has other ideas too of partnership type groups.
I just want to ask a quick question because this is a great conversation. It's great to hear everybody's opinion and where they stand. But I know I stated from the beginning that Rebecca Wolf and I were working on this. So I just want to make clear, are we still working on this?
This is working on it. This is
the board working on this. I stated earlier that you and I were working on the fair housing officer's position. So I'm asking you, are we still working on this?
Yep, we talked yesterday about it. And so it's
no, we didn't talk. But okay. Okay. If you're saying yes, okay. Then let's get to work on it. Because we can do this. That's all. Thank you.
Okay. And I think, I hope, Tiffany, that you find input from the board to be helpful so that when you and Rebecca are working on it, it's just a few more voices that have weighed in. And certainly Tim's information has been really valuable. So.
Absolutely, Chair. That's why I said it's a great conversation, but I just don't want to waste my time. I have a lot of things that I'm doing, and I just want to make sure that if we're working on something to present to the board, so we won't have to have a huge dialogue, and just get to the point and get to work and get to what we need to do. That's what I would like to do. But it's always great to hear people's opinions so we can add that, to the work that we're doing or supposed to do. That's all. So I just want to be clear and not waste anyone's time, let alone my own.
Fair enough.
Tiffany, do you want to describe any of what what we've talked about or what is going on behind the scenes with what you've found out?
I told you, Rebecca, I've been talking to the person who you were interested in the position. I told you, let's work on it. We sent each other emails. That's the information I can give to the board. That's all we have for right now. But we can always continue if we're going to get to work on this. That's all.
Okay.
If not, then we don't. That's all.
Okay, well, let's move ahead. Let's make progress. I have complete faith in the two of you that you can and will. So if there is no more discussion of that at this point, Tim, I want to thank you very, very much
My pleasure,
for
anytime.
joining us today. I'm sure this won't be the last time we call on you.
Oh, that's okay, anytime. Yep,
I'm very grateful for your input. It helped me understand because this is all fairly new to me. So I really appreciate it. Thank you so
Oh,
much for spending time with
yeah.
us.
Thank you,
you're
Tim.
welcome.
Thanks,
You're
Tim.
welcome. Thank you.
Yeah. So at this point of the meeting, we're at our public comment time. Does anyone from the public care to make a comment today? All right. Hearing none, I think we are at adjournment.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Thank you, Marie. All in favor of adjournment, say aye, please.
Aye.
Aye.
Any nays out there? Okay, thank you all very,